Hello, how are you doing? We are fast approaching Booker Prize season for 2022. This is the main Booker Prize, separate from the International Booker Prize, which we've already had and which was so wonderful to follow because there were some books that were listed for that prize that I'd read before and loved, so it was great to see them get award recognition. And then there were some other excellent books that I hadn't even heard of before, which I read and found absolutely fascinating. So yeah, that was really good to follow. But the long list for this year's main Booker Prize is going to be announced on July 26th, so in 2 weeks' time from when I'm filming this. And lots of people have already been speculating about what might be listed for this year's award. I've not looked at anyone else's speculations yet because I want to make my own picks and choices for what might be listed for this year's award, and then I'll run out and read everyone else's lists, and then we can debate and discuss, and I'm sure there are books that I haven't even thought of that might be nominated for this year's award. But I've picked my 13 choices for what I think are quite likely to be longlisted for this year's prize. These are a mixture of some books that I've read and loved, so I would love to see them get award recognition, and then there are other books which I'm really interested in and keen on, but which also I strategically think have a very good chance of being nominated for this year's prize. So it's really difficult to pick these choices because it could be any book written in English published in the UK or Ireland between October 1st of last year and September 30th of this year. So there's a huge amount of books that are potentially up for this year's award. But yeah, I've narrowed it down to just 13 choices, and yeah, we'll see how I do when the actual list comes out. So first off, I'm gonna pick a book that is a very likely choice, which is Ian McEwan's new novel Lessons, which hasn't actually been published yet. It's being published in mid-September, so I know a lot of people will be frustrated if it is longlisted for this year's prize that they can't actually read it yet and won't be able to read it until after the shortlist is actually announced. But yeah, Ian McEwan has been nominated for the Booker Prize 6 times before. He's won once before, so yeah, he seems a very likely choice. This novel has already been getting some praise, and it seems like quintessential Ian McEwan territory. It's about a boy named Roland who comes of age in the mid-20th century and follows him throughout his life, and how some early experiences reverberate throughout his life and kind of haunt him in that way, but also his encounters with a number of really big global occurrences like the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Suez Canal crisis, the Chernobyl crisis, I think all the way up until the recent pandemic. So yeah, is that kind of Ian McEwan territory of looking how broader historical events impact an individual's life and how that personal history sort of melds in with our broader, societal history. And yeah, it sounds so good. I'm really eager to read it. Next is a novel I only just read recently, but which I think is so extraordinary and also very, very likely to be listed for this year's award, which is Glory by NoViolet Bulawayo. And this is the author's only second novel, but her first novel, We Need New Names, was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and she was the first Black African woman to be nominated for the Booker Prize, and the first Zimbabwean to be nominated for the Booker. So yeah, seems like a very likely candidate, and this is a novel which has obviously been in the works for many years and is so skillfully done in taking its inspiration from George Orwell's Animal Farm to use that structure of having animals for characters to kind of play upon and parody the Zimbabwean coup in 2017, and how it does that in such a playful and funny but also serious and thoughtful and moving way, I think is so special, and so I expect this novel to do very well. Another book which is one of my favorite reads of this year so far is The Swimmers by Julie Otsuka, and this is about a group of people that attend a communal pool and the kind of habits and customs that arise out of their swimming in this pool, but also a woman that goes to this pool who is losing her memory and her difficulty with cognition, and how she's taken into a care home, and it follows that process. And it's such a powerful story and such a slender book, so I'm actually not sure if it would be eligible for the prize, because there is like a word, there is a certain amount of words that need to be, that are required a minimum amount of words in order to be listed for the prize, and I don't know what it is, and I don't know what the word count of this is, but I think it would be eligible. And Julie Otsuka is an author that has received a lot of award recognition in America, but not so much here in the UK, so I think this could be, her chance to sort of break out in Europe, and she's not produced all that many books, considering how long she's been writing. So yeah, obviously has very concentrated output of really quality fiction. Another novel which isn't actually out yet, but which I think is very likely to be listed, which is The Last White Man by Mohsin Hamid. That is going to be published around mid-August here in the UK, and this is a novel which sounds really interesting, and also is kind of quintessential of this author in taking this big social issue and then putting it in your face. He's been twice nominated for the Booker Prize before, most recently for his novel Exit West, and so in this novel, a man wakes up one morning and finds that his skin color has completely changed, and how that challenges his ideas of his own sense of self, but also how people around him relate to him, and how it affects the relationship that he's in. And so yeah, really confronting this issue of race sort of head on. And I know lots of people have very mixed feelings about this author. I mean, some readers absolutely love his books, other readers don't love his books quite so much, and I feel kind of mixed about it. I do feel like it's his novels can be more about the concept than the sort of story that you can get emotionally involved in, so I can kind of understand that criticism, but I'm really interested in reading this and seeing how he handles it. The Trees by Percival Everett, and this novel is another one of my favorites that I've read this year so far. It is so excellent how it combines this kind of detective mystery story with a larger story about issues to do with race in America today, and dealing with the history of lynching in America. And I think it's so special, novels that can combine sort of genre in that way, and kind of cross over to tell a story that's entirely new. And quite often the Booker Prize rewards books that do something really innovative with their structure and form, and Percival Everett is another author that's been lauded in America, but hasn't received so much recognition here in the UK, and a lot of his books have been being published here recently for the first time, including his most recent novel. So yeah, it's another author that I'm sort of hope will break out in the UK and Europe because of being listed for the Booker Prize. So I really hope he is, and I'm really looking forward to exploring more of his back catalogue of books. Mischief Acts by Zoe Gilbert, and this is another novel that does something really interesting with form, and this is an author that's writing in a way that I don't think any other writers are doing today. So this novel takes as its basis this mythological figure from folklore history called Herne the Hunter, who has kind of antlers on his head, and he rides a horse and he causes mischief in local areas, and it follows him through a number of years and centuries throughout this like local English history, and how he kind of interferes with the stories of individuals in these different time periods. Some are more kind of mythological or fantastical sections, and then there are others which are much more realistic, and is so fascinating and really unique. Now, Douglas Stewart is an author that doesn't really do anything too radical in his form to tell his stories, but then the story that he wants to tell really suits this very straightforward, realistic form of storytelling that he chooses to tell his stories. So I would say that the form he uses is really appropriate to his subject matter. Now, of course, Douglas Stewart won the Booker Prize a couple of years ago for his novel Shuggie Bain, and this is his second novel, which I think is really excellent and just as great as that first book, so definitely deserves to be nominated as well. It does cover the same sort of territory as Shuggie Bain in that it's in a very similar time period in Glasgow, and covers this same similar sort of demographic as that first book, but the way these characters in this novel react to their circumstances and the challenges they face in their lives are very different from that first book, and so I think it is really different from that first book and definitely deserves to be read, and it's a story that I just fell in love with. It is a love story, as you can see from the cover of this, the very excellent cover of this novel, but how these two young men's love life is disrupted by larger issues to do with religious conflict and homophobia, and yeah, it is so good. Now, another novel which made quite a big impact in the US, but which hasn't been talked about too much here in the UK, is Our Country Friends by Gary Shteyngart, and this is a novel very much of the moment. It's about a group of people that get together in early 2020 to stay in a house to kind of wait out the pandemic, and it's about the bonds and the relationships which form also during that time, but also the divisions that occur between them during that time. And yeah, I think this was nominated for a number of awards in the US, and I've been really keen to read it, so I'd love it if it was on the list as an excuse to get to it. Also, the Pulitzer Prize winning author Andrew Sean Greer says of this book, "There cannot be a more relevant novel for our moment, certainly not one with such beauty of description, depth of feeling, and as always, humor." Another one of my favorite reads of this year so far is The Colony by Audrey Magee, which is an extraordinary novel about a small remote island off the coast of Ireland, and about the community there, and how two foreigners, an Englishman and a Frenchman, come to stay on this island, and how they kind of infiltrate this community and the effect they have upon them. But also it concerns the troubles in the way that very brief sections are interjected in between this larger story, talking about incidents to do with the troubles and how people's personal lives are affected by this larger issue, and then that gradually shows how that works with this larger narrative that's occurring. And what I think is so extraordinary about this author is the way that she has this almost like journalistic account of larger events and larger issues, but is focusing it very much through the personal lives of her characters, and those are the ones that always come first. unlike in journalism where it sort of seems like people are used as an example of something or a statistic, but this very much focuses on their lives and how they're affected by these larger issues in both positive and negative ways. I think she takes a really well-rounded view of this. So yeah, I hope this gets some Booker Prize attention and some more wider recognition. And also I would find it very personally satisfying because I'd read it early on this year and have been raving about it since then. So I would just love to see more people reading and talking about it. Fight Night by Canadian author Miriam Toews, and this is a novel about an older woman, a grandmother, and how she's taken over responsibility for her granddaughter's education, but does so in a very unconventional way, and how her mother is going through a number of different issues. And Miriam Toews is such an extraordinary writer. I think it's time that she gets more award recognition, and I've only just started reading this. I'm only a chapter in, so but I'm really enjoying it so far, and this book has had such a great response. I've heard from multiple people that it's one of their favorite books of the year so far. So yeah, and it's a very different kind of narrative and story than a lot of others I've read recently. So yeah, it would be great to see this listed. Now, a novel which I think it's scandalous that it wasn't listed for this year's Women's Prize for Fiction, so I really hope it gets some recognition from the Booker, is Love, Marriage by Monica Ali. And this is another author that doesn't do anything too radical with like the form or structure of her narratives. It's quite a straightforward narrative, but has done so really effectively, and how it tells the story of a young woman named Yasmin who's getting married, and so issues to do in her life with her relationship, with her family, and with her job as a junior doctor, and her struggles within the medical system here in England, and yeah, looking at a whole wide range of issues, but through this very like personal lens, and in a way which is done so effectively, which just completely drew me into its story, and which I just enjoyed so much. An author who has been shortlisted for the Booker Prize before is Andrew Miller, and he has a new novel called The Slowworm's Son, which is about a man later in his years who is suddenly confronted with his experiences early in his life and his involvement in the Troubles in the early 80s, and he's called into an inquest, and it's about his relationship with his daughter and how that is affected by these revelations, and how the past is drawn into the present and following his story. This is a book I've not read yet, but which is on my summer reading list, and I'm really looking forward to reading soon because I've heard so many great things about it. And finally, my last choice for what I hope is longlisted for this year's Booker Prize is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoree Fanonne Jeffers, which was published in the UK early this year, so it is eligible for this year's prize. And I think I said at the start of the year, I hope this book wins every book award that it's eligible for. It's another book that I think it's scandalous it wasn't on this year's Women's Prize for Fiction, so I really hope it gets some Booker Prize recognition because it is so excellent. The story of three Black sisters living in Georgia, and how one sister in particular is looking at their family history, which is a mixture of Black heritage and Native American heritage, and how it goes into the stories of those previous generations while showing her own story and her experiences with her sisters, and how the history impacts the present. It's just so good, such a great sweeping historical book that I just didn't want to end, and yeah, that I just loved so much. So yeah, such an excellent book. So those are my choices for what I think will be listed for this year's award. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my choices, or if you have any picks of your own. Let me know about those in the comments below. There are, like I said, there's a lot more books and authors that are eligible and up for it. There's a new novel by Julian Barnes. There's Hanya Yanigihara's most recent novel, which I was kind of close to picking, but I'm not sure it'll make it I think the form of it is just a bit too jostling, and I made a whole video talking about my issues with this book, but also how I really enjoyed reading it. So in a way, I think it would be great if it was listed, because then it would generate a lot of discussion and talk and controversy. Well, we all like to have a bit of controversy around our book awards. But yeah, the actual long list will be announced on July 26th, like I said, so we'll see then what is on this year's actual list. But yeah, thank you for following my choices, and I hope you're reading good things, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye bye.